So one issue that I've tried to I spent a fair bit of my free time trying to figure out is how Dr. Peterson and I align on almost every point, even more so than I align with Sam, because I've been listening and reading Sam since I don't even know when, 2008 or 9 probably. And then I've been listening to and reading Dr. Peterson for the past 10 years. So there's a few year gap there. Um, I actually tend to align with Dr. Peterson more so than Sam, except on the one obvious topic. Um, I think they're both incredibly valuable, but I think in their talks they had four public talks in particular that are available on YouTube that I watched several times each one. I think that they're just talking past each other on the specific point of belief in God, and I think that's the one thing that Dr. Peterson may be intentionally getting wrong. And the point that Sam always brings up to him in these talks and in their podcast together is that by Dr. Peterson claiming to be a Christian, he is sort of validating the belief of your average Christian who believes that the world is only 5 or 10,000 years old, or that Jesus will physically return in their lifetime, or whatever it might be. And I think that that's a legitimate criticism. And I think at this point it has to be intentional to one degree or another, because Dr. Peterson's just too smart not to see that. But in reality, I don't know that Dr. Peterson's worldview is necessarily based in Christianity. And if you listen to the way that he explains the importance of the Bible, effectively what he's doing is he is extracting the knowledge that he can find from the Bible. And there's absolutely no connection between that and the mystical, magical stuff that the Bible claims really happened. And obviously, there's a fair amount of casuistry on his part on this particular topic. This might be the only topic where he is intentionally murky about what his beliefs are. And I think the foundation of his moral philosophy is the same as mine, which is the psychological well-being of humans. Now, he denies that for the same reason that I talked about in my other video, because it's the same moral foundation that Sam has, but he's hanging on to this idea that there's no objective foundation. As I said in my other video, I think that that's complete nonsense. We don't need an objective foundation for pretty much anything else. As Sam said, and as I said in the other video, when it comes to physical health, we know enough about what it looks like to not be physically healthy that we don't need an objective foundation to kind of codify our conception of what health is. And I think it's the same way for morals and living a good life. And what I notice in the talks between the two of them is that you never get a straight answer on what Dr. Peterson believes about the foundational claims of Christianity, and that is a problem. And when the one time that he's really pressed on it, his response is effectively, you don't know what you believe, or there are things that you believe that you don't know you believe that you act out every day. The problem with that, as Sam tries to point out, but it just doesn't hit home, is that the problem is that there's still a claim on the table that needs to be substantiated. So we can talk about the claim and how it impacts us and how useful it is and what it looks like and whether or not we are acting out the stories that are the basis of the foundational claims of the Bible. That may all be true, but it does not in any way address whether or not the foundational claims are true. And that's the real problem with Christianity and any religion. And my problem with Christianity is, in order for me to accept the word, the foundational claims must be true. And if there is reasonable doubt that the claims are true, I can't just accept it. The problem with the Bible is that there are things in the Bible that are objectionable, obviously. And as a modern society, we know that we ought to reject those claims. Things like, if a virgin isn't married on her wedding night, she should be put to death. And, if you see a homosexual, you should slay him at the feet of Jesus or his father or whatever, because he's committed an abomination. He'll be put to death. His blood is on his own hands. That type of stuff. Really, the value that's been extracted by Christianity has been molded by secular values. But I think the real problem that presents is, if there are things in the Bible that are objectionable, and we all know that there are, and how do we know that they're objectionable? Because if there's something in the book that is objectionable, we have to have some other type of moral foundation to figure out that they're objectionable. If the Bible is the only way, and we can't get our values from anywhere else, we would have no reason to expect that those things are objectionable. It is explicitly because we have a different set of foundational values, and everyone does, and they behave according to those values through the lens of the Bible, if they're a Christian, and then claim that the Bible is the foundational moral, set of principles. But why is it wrong to kill homosexuals? Well, we know that it's wrong because killing another person is something we inherently know is wrong. We have an inherent humanity built into us through our evolution. If you don't play well with other members of the tribe, you're not going to last. So in our history, with our ancestors, those who did play well with the tribe survived and passed along their genes. And those genes were selected for and against by our need to survive as a species. And that is objectively the basis of our moral values. And it's unseemly that Dr. Peterson knows what he knows about evolution, particularly evolutionary psychology, and yet he still doesn't publicly draw that connection. And the reason is, if he does draw that connection, then there's no need for the Bible. And that, I think, is the foundational problem. But again, he knows all of this, and that's why he is so careful about how he responds to questions about the Bible. For example, when he's asked if there are objectionable things in the Bible, his response is, well, you have to read the whole book, or you have to look at it in context. Here's the thing. There is no context in which slavery is permissible. There's no context in which slavery is morally defensible. It's just not the case. So regardless of the end of the book, or slavery in context, or the nonsense lie I hear all the time from people like Dennis Prager that slavery from back then is different than we had in America, and it was really indentured servanthood. The bottom line is, keeping humans as property, as the Bible explicitly states that humans that are slaves are property, is morally wrong. And we all know that. How can you get that from the Bible? You can't get that notion that slavery is wrong from the Bible, because the Bible explicitly condones and endorses slavery. So there must be some set of external values that we are using to guide our way through the Bible. And that's why we accept the good things and we throw out the bad things. So we accept, treat your neighbor as yourself, and we throw out kill homosexuals when you see them because they've committed an abomination. obviously there must be some type of external guiding principle in order for us to function that way. I think sort of hypothesis of mine is there have been thousands of religions and thousands of gods, and a lot of them have similar stories. I think Christianity stuck and became so widespread because it had the right combination of enough good things, and it was among people who were making enough progress. And that's where we get this idea that this country was founded on Judeo-Christian values. That can't be true because the Ten Commandments, even though there were however many commandments, we stick with the 10. If this were a country explicitly founded on Judeo-Christian values, there would be no freedom of religion. It makes no sense, because if you're founded on a philosophy that proclaims that this person is the way and the truth and the light, and their existence is what humanity's well-being hinges on, why would you permit other people not to believe that? It doesn't make sense, because if it's objectively the truth, you're not going to found a country and encourage other people to not believe what you know to be true. The whole notion of religious freedom, sure, the practical application for most of those people was because they believed a truth that was different than the prevailing truth, however slightly, in Britain at the time. But you can't have a Bill of Rights that are fundamentally very different than the Ten Commandments if this is a Judeo-Christian country. Of course, most of the people in this country are Christian. That is still a majority. But I think we just have to recognize and accept that regardless of how strongly we feel about this fairy tale, that we're going to apply logic and reason in every other area, but we're going to make an exception for our favorite fairy tale. That is a bad idea. That is objectively a bad idea. And it's the one thing that's holding basically the conservative side as a whole back. The one thing I think, I mean, there are examples of things that do come from the Bible and are taught by the Bible that are objectively correct. For example, the relationship between man and woman. This is something that's accepted by conservatives for the most part and wholly rejected by liberals. The man should be the leader of the family, of the home. Now, that's just kind of thought of as patriarchy or men are domineering. It's not that at all. When I first met my wife is 10 years older than me. She was one of these strong, independent women, had her own car, had her own house, was making more money than me at the time. She is now on her own decision. It's not something I ever brought up to her. She decided she wanted to have kids. She's now a stay-at-home mom and is happier than she's ever been. Because you can't beat biology. I mean, if you told her 5 years ago that, hey, 5 years from now, you're going to be a stay-at-home mom, you're not even going to be working, and you're actually going to love your life more than you do now, she wouldn't have believed that. And the feminists that you hear railing against this foundational truth about human psychology are the ones who have never met the man that is going to provide that for them. So psychologically, when it comes to like relationship dynamics, to just kind of drive this point home, when you first meet a woman, she's going to test you constantly. That's all that it's going to be, is just to test you. She's going to try to order the food at the restaurant. She's going to try to drive everywhere. And whether she realizes or not, it's likely that she's not realizing it. But what she's doing is she's making sure that you're the man that she wants you to be, because she carries a burden that you don't. And that burden is, if we have a child, you can just run, but I will be compelled to take care of the child, and I don't want to have to do that and provide for myself. So that is really what she's looking for is the security and to be provided for. Now, if you're not handling your responsibilities as a man, she's going to start taking over some of those responsibilities and losing respect for you as a man. And we see this all the time with the married couple where, yes, honey, no, honey, blah, 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 where the guy is just a total shell of what he used to be. She doesn't respect him as a man anymore. That's something that's driven home very well and very concisely in the Bible. And it may be a little bit harsh for people who get their feelings hurt easily, but you can't beat biology. And that's one of those things in the Bible that the Bible gets right. And almost certainly the people reading the Bible may or may not have known that. Likely they didn't, because there's no way that they could have had that type of psychological knowledge about humans. But when it comes to things like that in the Bible, and this is something I would like to hear Dr. Peterson address. It's not like this video is ever going to reach him, but the Bible, the good things in the Bible, especially with relation to human behavior, the good things that we observe in the Bible are descriptive. And you can tell this because so many of the same stories and ways to relate human behavior are visible in most other religious scriptures. The problem is most Christians view the Bible as prescriptive. And it's not that you should be the leader of your house and you should provide for your wife and your kids because the Bible says so. It's because human evolutionary psychology has narrowed us down as a species to men are effectively indispensable. So we have to fill some type of purpose. The woman does the one miraculous and only necessary thing for our survival, which is she can create offspring. That's a tremendous burden to bear. So things work better for the woman and the child when they are provided for, because that's too much responsibility for her to carry herself. So as we move along as a species, our genes are selected for, and those who have the urge to be a provider end up providing for their own family and creating offspring with their wives. This is observed by the Bible and written into the Bible, but it's not prescriptive of human behavior. It doesn't happen that way because God intended it. It happens that way because that's the way that we evolved as a species, and people who wrote the Bible observed that type of human behavior. So that notion that the Bible just describes human behavior and it doesn't prescribe human behavior is applicable everywhere where the Bible has good things to say. And that's my one problem with Dr. Peterson is, as the most brilliant clinical psychologist in the world, he must know that. And I hope at some point he acknowledges that. All right. Thanks for listening.